Hello, Bearcats, or any other student anywhere in the country that may be listening to this. I am recording this in the midst of the absolute chaos that is COVID-19, and my goal today is to help my students, or anyone listening, figure out how to write a DBQ. Now, before we begin, I am not a person that is like on the college board that wrote this. I am not an AP grader. The way that I show you how to write this might not be the way that the college board like explicitly wants. In fact, the essay that we write together today might not be a 10 out of 10. But if you can write like this, it will help you pass the AP exam. And after all, that's why we're here. Okay, we're officially here because we're supposed to learn stuff or whatever, but okay. Also, I'm going to try to keep this video relatively short, but you should be using the attached document. I'll include it in the doobly-doo down below. You should be using that. You might want to print it out. And uh, that is what you're going to want to use. I'm going to pause. I'm going to tell you guys to pause this video multiple times. That way this video doesn't seem super long, but you guys can use this for your own benefit. So first, really quickly, let's go ahead and go over how the rubric has changed for this new crazy test. The good news is it's mostly the same idea. Now, the rubric before was on a 7-point scale. Now it's on a 10-point scale. So what's changed? Okay, there's only 5 documents total. So you get 1 point for using 2 documents, and you get an additional point if you use 4. Obviously, you should always try to use every document just in case you get one wrong. And with this DBQ, you might get one wrong. I'll explain why later. Next, those HIP statements, the idea of bringing in the historical context is the one that we always practice. So bringing those in, if you use it once, you get a point. If you use it twice, you get a second point. So uh, these are points that I want you guys to just focus on historical context. It's easier that way. Uh, that is how you would do that. Okay? Then there are 2 outside evidence points this time. Used to just be 1, now it is 2. So let's bring in some more outside evidence. I'm assuming the logic here is that because they're giving you fewer documents, you'll have more to say outside of it. The topic is only going to come from periods between, or from topics between 1754 and 1945. So that's right before the start of the American Revolution and through World War II. So this cuts off, about like 100 years of history or 200 years of history that we would normally cover. So this is a good thing for most of us, I am sure. Now, the format of the DBQ is basically the same thing. This time, though, you only have 45 minutes. You usually have 55, so you're losing 10 minutes here. They took away 2 documents, though, so maybe that will help. Here's what we got. You're going to write an intro paragraph that is the exact same as the ones that we have been doing forever. There is no difference here. Don't freak out. It's the exact same. Then you're going to write 2, maybe 3 body paragraphs. My assumption is you're probably only going to write 2 body paragraphs, mainly because of time. But it's the exact same as we've always done. Topic sentence, historical background or context, include the document as your concrete detail, give some analysis, repeat. You're probably not going to write a conclusion. In fact, I'm almost going to tell you not to, just because you're not going to have time. You're just not. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and dive into the 2017 AP exam. Now, the 2017 exam asked a question that, to be honest, I think would be perfect for them to ask in 2020. I doubt they will ask a question that is this close to one they just asked, but there's so many things you could say about this prompt. Okay, the very first thing we do is we look at the prompt itself. Evaluate the extent of change in ideas about American independence from 1763 to 1783. The very first thing we always do is put this into English. So, how and why did opinions about American independence change? That's basically what this is saying. Not every American supported independence at the time, and why? There you go. You'll notice the dates. 1763 is the end of the French and Indian War, and 1783 is basically when the Treaty of Paris is signed. So this gives you an idea of the time period it's talking about. This is basically an oblique way of asking you about what was going on with the American Revolution and did every American support it. Okay, so now that we've looked at the prompt, what I want you guys is to do an outline. And remember, we need 2 pieces of outside information, and we're going to do this before we look at the documents. So go ahead and pause the video and make a list of as many things that you know. Use your notes if you need to, but go ahead, take about 3 minutes to do this. Go ahead, pause the video, and when you've made a list of hopefully 5 to 7 things, we'll move on. Okay, so here is the list I came up with, and I tried to put it in some semblance of chronological order, but it's not perfect. In fact, it's not even close to chronological order, so why did I say that? Okay, anyway, let's take a look at my list. Uh, we're going to probably start by talking about Pitt's Promise, right? That's what this whole thing goes around. Then we could talk about the various acts, the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, Townshend Act, Tea Act, Intolerable Act. By the way, you need 2 pieces of outside evidence. These are great pieces right there on their own. We could talk about Common Sense by Thomas Paine. We could talk about the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, the First and Second Continental Congresses, the Olive Branch Petition. Oh, and your essay should probably end with the Declaration of Independence. That's a big change in how Americans feel. The general idea that we're going to try to think of is that colonists didn't initially want to rebel, but they're forced to rebel because of actions by the British or the king or whatever you're going to say. Now, go ahead and take a couple of minutes. I want you guys to read the documents and add them into your chart. If there's a document that seems close to one of the things in our chart, go ahead and add it. Again, pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys about 10-ish minutes, hopefully less, because the more time you could save on this, the more you'll have to actually write the essay. But go ahead and pause the video. Take about 10 to 10 minutes to go ahead and read the documents and add them to your chart. When you're ready, hit resume. Okay, you're ready. So this is kind of what I saw. Now, we could go through each document. In fact, what the heck, let's just do that really quickly. Again, I don't have them in this presentation, but you have them in the attached document below. So the first document looks like it's about a response to the Stamp Act. So we're going to go ahead and tie that to where we had various acts. There you go. There's that Stamp Act. Good. Moving on. Document 2. Now, this is from the Virginia House of Burgesses. Now, the Virginia House of Burgesses, of course, is a legislative colonial body. And they're going to say that only they should have the decisions about taxes in the region. So I tied this to this idea of like independent thoughts arising. But this is kind of more of like, when I bring this into my essay, I'm going to talk about how the colonists thought they should make these decisions on their own and not have them imposed on them. Document 3 is about the Quakers. Now, I know in class I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the Quakers, but they are a religious group that isn't really super big on getting involved in fights. They're very independently minded, but they're not like declare independence independent. They're more like, we're going to go ahead and ignore everyone else and just do our own thing. They're also very opposed to war. So I'm going to tie that into the idea of the colonists wanting to remain British, or more accurately for document 3, staying out of a fight. Document 4 is from another Anglican minister. Ironically, it says Anglican church minister, but the document is more talking about the expense of independence, not just the expense of the war, but remember, the British are the biggest colonial trading partner. So if we punch them in the face, they're probably not going to get along with us. It's a pretty astute observation by that minister. And then finally, document 5. Now, this is not from the book Common Sense. This is from another pamphlet that he wrote. He wrote a bunch of them. So, and this is what I was mentioning earlier about how you might get a document wrong. When you bring document 5 into your essay, you want to say that this is in addition to Common Sense. It's a common mistake that a lot of students made when they wrote this DBQ back in the day. Okay, so now what we should do, and again, I know on the actual DBQ day, you're going to be running low on time by this point, but go ahead because we have time right now. I want you guys to outline this essay. What I want you to do is to pause the video and think about how you would structure this essay. So, what do you bring up in your intro? You should also construct a thesis. We're going to stick with the although blank, ultimately blank, so formula because that one still works. What's the general outline of body paragraph 1? What documents you're going to use? What is the general outline of body paragraph 2? What documents you're going to use? Again, you got to do this pretty quick. Pause the video, but only take about a minute to do this. Okay? Go ahead, and when you're ready, hit continue or unpause. Continue. Mullen, you use YouTube. You know how this works. Okay, sorry. So let's move on. Okay, so again, I did this in way more detail than you guys should. You might be doing this on a scratch piece of paper or something with your chart. I'm going to go ahead and guess that you're not going to write it in this much detail. But because I have time, we're on YouTube, whatever. Now that we're over 11 minutes, I'll get ad video money. I'm just joking. Um, or am I? I am a teacher. Anyway, so let's take a look at how I would structure this paragraph. I'd start by talking about the French and Indian War, and I'd tie that into Pitt's promise. And then I would talk about how Pitt's promise is going to be violated, which leads to anger. My thesis looks like this. Although the colonists originally wanted to remain British, actions by the British Parliament and King forced the colonists to rebel, leading to the Revolutionary War and American independence. That's my thesis. First body paragraph is going to be about the Americans wanting to remain British, and the second body paragraph is going to be about how the actions of the king are going to encourage more and more Americans to rebel. Okay, body paragraph 1. Americans want to remain British. I'll talk about documents 3 and 4, and my outside information, I'm going to bring in the Olive Branch petition. Not a bad idea. And then body paragraph 2, I'm going to talk about how the British are going to force independence on the Americans. I'll talk about documents 1, 2, and 5, and I'll bring in the Declaration of Independence as outside information. Okay, now, I'm going to hold you guys to your own word here. I want you guys to attempt to write the essay on your own. Time yourself and give yourself 30 minutes. Stop when a 30-minute timer goes off. With about 15 minutes to read an outline, you'll probably only have 30 to write. Again, according to the College Board, they're going to open up the window right on the hour. I think it's at 11 o'clock our time. And the essay has to be submitted by 11:50. They're going to give you a 5-minute grace period to submit. If it's 11:51 and you haven't submitted, your AP exam won't count. So you got 45 minutes. That's all you got. Go ahead, pause the video for 30 minutes, and I'll see you when you're done. Okay, we're going to review my sample, and yes, I promise you I wrote this in less than 30 minutes. I type very fast, but it was because I had already outlined this essay. And to be fair, because I'm teaching you, I did spend more than 15 minutes reading the documents and making this outline because I had to make this PowerPoint, my sample essay, and the document that you're looking at all at the same time. So yes, I spent more time preparing to write this essay, but the essay itself was written in less than 30 minutes. The text here is going to be small because, I only have so much space, but of course you guys have this typed out on the Google Doc, which is included below. Follow along to see why this scores well. Now, this essay is far from perfect. As much as I like to think that I'm perfect, this essay is far from perfect, but it gets the idea across. This is probably not a perfect score, but it's probably a solid 7 or 8 out of 10, which I have to assume is going to be a 4 or a 5. Okay. Again, reasonably, we want to get, I don't know, maybe a 6 out of 10 on this rubric to pass the AP exam. So if we can get above that, we're great. Let's go ahead and see how we do, or more accurately, how I did, and how this works. Again, you guys can read along in the sample document that I've included below. In 1754, the American colonists were enticed to fight in the French and Indian War by the British. The British, through something called Pitt's Promise, promised the American colonists that if they fought in the war, they would not be required to pay for it. After the British victory in that war, with colonial help, the British needed to recoup their expenses and began imposing various taxes on the American colonists. These taxes led to protests like the Boston Tea Party, which led to more British suspensions of salutary neglect like the Intolerable Acts. As tensions between both sides escalated, questions arose as to American independence from Great Britain. Now remember, in your intro paragraph, your job is to set up the story. This has set up the story. This is where the whole problem comes from. This is historical context. I guarantee this would earn a point. And now my thesis. Although the colonists originally wanted to remain British, actions by the British Parliament and King forced the colonists to rebel, leading to the Revolutionary War and American independence. And yeah, that sounds pretty good. By the way, if you hear any sighing, it's from my dog. She's not a fan of American history, probably because she is a French poodle. Anyway, moving on, let's look at the body paragraphs and see how they score. Before American independence was declared, most of the American colonists saw themselves as British. By the way, this is true. As most colonists came from Great Britain, there was a direct cultural and familial tie to the region. There were also economic ties to Great Britain as well, as the mercantilist policies that the British set up sent American raw materials to Britain in exchange for British goods. Now, this might be a little bit more background than you might actually need, or that I've like put into the formula that you should write, but it sets up the story of how we're going to have to change from our original thought. This cultural and economic tie led many to refuse to discuss independence, including religious groups like the Quakers who were opposed to any fighting. Document 3. As tensions mounted with the British, the First and Second Continental Congresses were set up to air grievances of the American people, while still claiming loyalty to the British. The British king, however, ignored such letters as the Olive Branch Petition, even though it expressly stated that the colonists wanted to remain British subjects, and instead responded by sending more troops to the colonies. Okay, this is a lot of analysis and a lot of background, but sometimes the College Board, when you bring in outside information, they want you to try to define it if it isn't immediately obvious. So I went out of my way to set up and define the Olive Branch Petition to guarantee I got that point. I might also get the point for the First and Second Continental Congress. I might also get the point for mercantilism up in the middle of the paragraph. But I wanted to be very explicit that I was going for the Olive Branch Petition as outside information. I want to guarantee I get that point. Even as late as 1776, after the Revolutionary War had begun, many colonists were opposed to fighting and leaving the British Empire due to both the costs of the war but also the future economic costs of lost trade. Support for American independence was far from uniform. Again, I could probably give some better analysis for Doc 4, but I feel pretty confident at this point in the essay that I've done what I need to start scoring points. Ooh, hey, this is a long one. Yuck. Okay, it's okay. Don't freak out. However, it was the actions of the British king and the suspension of salutary neglect that forced the American colonists to rebel and declare independence. By the way, I'm not farting, that's just my chair. Having an old office chair is not a good idea. Anyway, in the aftermath of the war, the British began imposing a series of taxes on the American colonists, even though they expressly said they would not. Taxes such as the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, and Tea Act angered the American colonists, leading to events and protests all over the country, such as the Boston Tea Party. Okay, I could have worded this a bit differently because it makes it seem like I'm saying that document 1 is the Boston Tea Party, but I'm talking about how there are protests. So hopefully the College Board will let that fly. Who knows? They kind of hate me, so maybe they wouldn't. Again, that was my chair. That's my chair. The taxes were seen as a violation of Pitt's promise and a suspension of salutary neglect, which had allowed the American colonies to rule themselves previously. Ooh, I should add the word previously, but I can't edit this now, so oh well. As the 1770s progressed, the colonists became more frustrated with the British. Finally, with the Intolerable Acts and the closing of the Boston Harbor, many colonists began to realize that remaining British subjects was no longer a possibility. And while the First and Second Continental Congresses said that the colonists wanted to remain in the British Empire, they also prepared for a war. This, coupled with fiery essays by Thomas Paine, including his widely read pamphlet Common Sense, encouraged many Americans to join the Patriot effort for independence. Eventually, the Declaration of Independence would state the reasons for independence that many Americans had come to accept, and the 27 grievances against the king would prove that the Americans were forced into declaring independence and show how the colonists' opinions on independence had changed. Okay, you'll notice here that the last sentence of this body paragraph almost serves as my conclusion. I've kind of restated my thesis here towards the end, but I also make a bigger point. Everything that's happened led to the Declaration of Independence, and everything that we have done is a change in our opinion because of actions of the king. To me, this is a pretty solid essay. Again, it might not be a 10 out of 10. I'm not going to ever claim I understand the College Board that well, but this has got to be a 6 or a 7, which to me equates to passing. So if your goal is to pass the AP exam, this is pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. And there you have it. Now, please let me know by email or remind if you found this helpful. This took me a couple hours total to put together and to look up and to research and to talk to all these other teachers and rah, 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 rah. So, if you found this helpful, please let me know. If you did not find this helpful, please let me know what I can do instead. We only have a couple of weeks to figure out how to pass the AP exam. I'd like to do 2 of these a week, two for each time period. That'll get us right up to the AP exam. So again, if you're not finding this helpful, if you feel that I'm wasting your time, please let me know because this takes a lot of time to do. Other than that, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you and your families are staying healthy and safe. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and to work on this. I realize that you guys have a lot going on in your life right now, and hopefully diving back into some history can help you guys forget about the problems of our current world and instead focus on the problems of the past world. Ah, yeah, Bearcats. Ah, yeah.